is God our creation, or are we God's creation? To you, we're God's creation. All right. And what's your how do we learn about God? What's the key source?
It started for me in the household. Parents grew up in the church, so the first thing was like the Bible, pretty much. And then just from Genesis and reading on in Sunday school and church, pastors and Bible studies from like Wednesdays and Sunday service and Sunday night mass.
Right. So biblical doctrines. And
definitely.
Did you take it on as your own, or did you keep it?
Family, and then kind of just went from there on. We just kind of kept the traits to see with our faith.
Okay. Cool.
Definitely.
All right. Awesome. How do you know for sure he exists? Is it just because of the biblical text, or?
It's just always a higher power. I mean, things don't happen for a reason the way they do, and we can't explain it. So I figure it has to happen for a reason. I mean, you see this document with Noah and the burning bush and all that. So you can't just make stuff up like that, or something. It's like a bush on fire, like see, it's a burning bush, or the Ten Commandments. So it's something that's definitely it's instilled in something that actually witnesses happening. Okay. So I definitely think it's out there.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Okay, so that's about it. So
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. No problem. Just when we die, after we die.
Like in the afterlife?
Yeah, if there's an afterlife, or what do you think?
Well, in my personal theology, I believe that people will be judged for, not for their sins, but whether they're forgiven or not in terms of salvation. And so there will be a judgment at the end in a place where there's a timeless kind of area. And so that's where everyone will be judged. Okay. Yes. Heaven or hell.
Heaven or hell? Okay. What makes them forgiven?
It comes based upon redemption through acceptance of Jesus Christ. That depends on a person's, well, I personally believe that it depends on a person's knowledge of Christ and the knowledge of the world. I mean, if a person's in the whole deep dark Africa sort of analogy or example, where they have no knowledge of Christ, I believe God judges justly based upon a person's knowledge.
Good. Yeah, so what about someone who more lives it instead of seeks out the knowledge part of it?
Could you clarify that? What do you mean?
Say, if you're saying knowledge of God, what if they more live out for God instead of, do you know what I'm saying?
Not really.
Are you saying
live
book
out?
Book knowledge as in knowing God, or in personal knowledge of God?
So he's talking about book knowledge versus personal relationship knowledge?
Yeah.
What's the question again?
Where do you stand for that? What knowledge are you
for salvation?
Yeah.
Or, personal relationship, it comes to a point where a person's personal life, whether they know God and his purpose in their life, and whether they accept that and receive him. If it's just book knowledge without the truly accepting person, then obviously that's not salvation.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. So that's good. Personal, is morality a matter of opinion, or is there like a set standard for morality?
Well, I think in terms of morality, like there's a set standard based on what God wants for our lives and things like that. But I don't think that any human can achieve that set standard or knows that set standard. So we can try to interpret what God has as those set standards, but can never really fully know. So.
How do you know God's right?
Well, in my life, my experience in knowing that God exists and that God is the truth is kind of from not finding a way to disprove it. So I haven't found anything in my life that would lead me to believe otherwise. Okay. So it's kind of like, which side are you going to pick? And if you can't disprove it, then at least that's what I've gone with. So.
Okay. All right, cool. I guess that's it. So thank you for God's creation.
You're God's creation.
God's creation. All right. How do you learn about God personally, or how do we as people?
Learning from people that have read the Bible, people who have had experiences with it, and reading about it.
Okay. So pass down from people to people?
Yeah.
One text? Okay. All right.
And experiences.
Okay. How do you know you're experiencing with God now?
Nobody really knows.
So just a matter of faith? Okay. Alright, well I guess define evil itself.
Define evil itself.
Yeah. Not that broad, you know?
Oh yeah, of course not. Not broad at all.
What is this for?
It's for philosophical, contemporary philosophical history class. Interesting. Yeah.
Where at?
Bakersfield.
Christian high school. So, yeah, always.
You tried.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Well, in bioethics, we learned that evil is something that's morally or ethically wrong. You know, that when you're harming I mean, there's different beliefs, but one of the beliefs was when you're ethically or morally hurting someone physically or mentally. So that's, I mean, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
it's evil.
It fits the broad.
It fits the broad.
It does, but it's still
If it's the broad
Yeah.
conception, the only issue is that you can poke holes in it
Yeah.
in saying things for the greater good,
Yeah.
etc., as America loves doing.
Well, if that's the definition, how would you solve evil, if you could? If evil is harming someone else, or we can agree evil is harming someone. So how would you solve evil?
The solution would depend on the premise of how evil originated. If you follow it biblically, there isn't really a solution. Because the best you can do is try to imitate Jesus and follow God in that fashion.
Yeah.
But since no human can be perfect, you always fall short. Which doesn't eliminate evil, it just minimizes it.
Yeah.
And that's potentially the best you can do. From a non-religious standpoint, there's probably nothing that can be done.
So just no solution to evil apart from the view of it.
Not particularly. Laws don't solve evil. They only affect the aftermath of evil. So, and preventative laws, as is proven, have some benefit, but they don't stop it from ever ending.
Well, yeah, you have an answer. Do you have anything?
Ditto.
Yeah. Okay. Word.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really it. So thank you for
What is a good life? Like living the perfect dream.
Just being successful.
Being successful? Just making a lot of money and stuff?
Not necessarily, just, I guess, I impact other people.
Okay. How would you define success in itself?
I guess I think success is how, not exactly how much you have, is how you affect other people's lives.
Okay. And what's your like? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to affect other people?
What would be known as like hardworking and some of that surface.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you.
So what do you guys think happens to us after we die?
We go to heaven.
Go to heaven?
Or
Or hell?
Yeah.
What determines that?
Your relationship with Jesus Christ.
Okay. How would you define like a good relationship with Jesus Christ? And is it like a knowledge in the head, or is it like more of a relationship?
It's the traveling from the head to the heart. So it's a relationship. It's something that's mutual. It's not just it's not all head knowledge.
Okay. What do you think?
I agree.
Agree? Okay. Let's see. Well, alright. If you say that, how can you be sure, like 100%, like, where do you get that knowledge? Like, where do you know that?
That's where faith comes in. I think. So it's not something that can be explained, but something that I don't know. You can't use logic specifically. I don't believe you use logic to explain it all.
Well,
You're in philosophy.
yeah. What would be an argument for someone who claims that it has to be explained through logic?
You want something, an argument for believing in God with
Well,
logic?
say that someone is arguing against you and says, well, you have no facts to prove it, and you have to be delusional to believe that it's more, it can't just be faith, you know?
Okay.
So where can you argue that?
Well, I would argue that you have to have faith for a lot of things that are seeming menial. Like, an example my teacher uses, like, have you ever been to Japan?
I actually have, yeah.
Okay, well, a place that you haven't been to. And then,
yeah.
like, how do you know that it exists? You don't go to it. But I'm not sports support.
No, that's a good one. That's the Utah one. So, yeah, awesome. That's really fun.
Okay. Okay. What happens after we die?
We go to heaven.
Okay. Like, how can you be sure?
I don't know. My philosophy class, we talk about souls, and we basically decided that when you die, your body stays here, but your soul moves on.
Yeah. Is the purpose of education to find the truth or to prepare for a profession? Or
I think it's to prepare for a profession. Like, we go to college to major in something to prepare for what we're going to do for later on in life.
how can you know you are right and what is the purpose? How can you know that that's the purpose?
I think that's just like what we've been raised to believe. Like your parents say, go to college, pick a major that you like, that you enjoy, so that when you move on later in life, you have a job, you are working with something that you love, and that you don't want to pick to major in math if you hate numbers because that's not right for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's.
Believe is the origin of evil. What is first? What is evil?
It's the opposite of good.
Opposite of good. Yeah. So, what do you think the origin of evil is?
Good question.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, I think honestly, like, this might sound weird, but it must be God.
Yeah.
Like, even though, yeah.
Yeah. How so? How do you think God? Do you think He intentionally created evil, or He just made a mistake?
Well, He didn't make a mistake, but I think by creating like a polar, when you create polar opposites, you always create polar opposites. So when you create something good, you're also going to create something evil. You know, and sometimes evil is just the absence of something good.
Would it be the evil? So we can agree that evil is anything devoid of good. How can there be evil if God claims to be He is all-present, all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent? How can there be evil if He can't be?
Because there are places where God isn't.
So would that mean that God's not omniscient or omnipresent?
Yeah, good point.
Would that make God a liar then?
I can see where you're headed, yeah.
Okay. Alright. Yeah, sorry, these are just kind of
Yeah.
so I guess that's really all. Just quick questions.
Is God our creation or are we God's creation?
Oh, that's a good question. It's hard. I don't know. I think we are God's creation.
Okay, how do you learn about God?
In church.
How would you define evil?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't know. Some of our actions, like bad actions.
So is it human condition or is it spiritual as well? Do you think God is evil?
No.
You don't think so? So it's just your human condition?
Yeah, I think so.
So what do you think the solution would be?
I don't know. Praise for good things and then do good and try to do good as much as we can.
Cool. Thank you.
How do you define evil?
How do I define evil?
Yeah. Jump right into it.
Well, coming from a Christian background, you can see that evil is those things that go against God. Murdering, a lot of those different things that are well known, rape.
What do you reinforce the edges with?
But it's a difficult thing because there's I don't see it as clearly black and white. There's a huge gray area that I think there is that you can't really start to judge what is right and wrong. I believe that God is the true judge, and so therefore you have Him as the super authority, whereas we're just we can kind of guess. And there's some things that cross onto either side.
So we have to look to Him for that.
So we have to look to Him, but also, we can't jump on something and say, well, God said this is evil. And there's some things that are clearly evil and good, but there's also those lines where it's all muddled, and when you start getting closer to the middle, you're like, what is evil, what is good?
So what would you do to find out what to do in that gray matter? So say something like abortion. Some argue that it is evil, outright murder, and some say, well, it's a mother's choice, it's no problem. So that could be looked at as a gray area, possibly, right?
Well, I believe it's life. I believe inside the womb at conception there's life. God, and it says in the scriptures, if we're going by a Christian philosophy, it says, I knew you before you were even in the womb. I knew your name, I knew who you were going to be. And so coming into that, I think it's life, and so therefore it is considered murder. And that would be something that is evil.
So, okay, back to more evil. What do you think the origin of evil itself is?
origin of evil itself.
Yeah.
Well, that's difficult, because then you're like, well, if God is the creator of all things, you know, there has to be something that you can compare to. In order for something to be good, there has to be something that's evil. If there's something that's, you know, they say, you know, intelligence, you know, in order for you to be smart, there has to be someone dumb that you can compare yourself to. And so, I don't know, I think, yeah, that's a difficult question. So I think God has something to do with that. I feel like there has to be something that shows His goodness, that shows His righteousness and His overall goodness, and that there has to be something evil as to compare to His goodness. So,
Yeah, that's pretty much all we had.
Okay.
What is
What can you
evil?
define? Yeah, how do you define evil?
Evil is that which is the negative of good, I guess.
Negative good? Yeah, like the absence, devoid of anything.
Yeah, yeah, or the corruption. Well, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. It's the way things are not supposed to be. It's the way things ought not to be.
Okay.
And when you see somebody say that's evil, you're saying there's a certain way things ought to go, and it's not going in that way. Therefore, it's evil.
Well, then how would you know what evil is compared to good? How can you draw the line?
Well, of course, you'd have to have a standard of good. Typically, the negation is understood in relation to that which is positive. So, you know, it's, you know, for example, you're supposed, if it's good that you're supposed to live in peace with other people, or you know, the life of human beings is sacred, then of course it's bad, obviously, to kill somebody.
What is that standard, or just for you even, what do you think that standard of good is where can it be found?
Well, I think for myself, I'd have a hard time, say, pinning it down, objectively at least, in terms of societal norms and things like that.
Yeah.
I think for myself, it seems most logical to have a divine standard, or some sort of transcendent standard, you might say, outside of, I guess, above human reasoning or the subjective, you know, changes within society. And so I'd say, you know, you can pin it down to God, or, you know, other people, you know, try to use other sort of transcendent form. But as a Christian, obviously for myself, falls into God being the standard.
Right. And where do you think the origin is? Because it could be argued that God is ultimately the origin of evil. But do you think He wanted to create evil? Was it in His plan? Or
well, again, coming back to that sort of the way things ought and ought not to be. If things ought, well, in this case, at least from my Christian perspective, it's the things which are good are those things which accurately reflect the character and nature of God. So He is what ought to be, or, you know, sort of that thing which intends things to be a certain way. And so if things are a certain way, it's those things which don't line up with that character or His will or intention or anything. Those things are what generates evil, I guess you could say. So it's not so much that I say that He generates it as a direct product, but it's sort of an indirect product of goodness, because there's, because of the nature of the opposites there.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. We didn't do it.
Okay. Dang. Well, you want to go
No,
first?
you, by all means.
Okay. Well, I suppose evil would be the absence of good. I mean, I took a philosophy class, and I'm pretty sure that's what evil is. Like that.
I think it's the absence of God in general. Like,
yeah.
God
if you believe in God,
is good. Yeah, if you believe in God, God is good in all that He is, and so anything set apart from Him, I think, in that way,
would be evil. Like killing.
Like killing.
Killing, yeah. Good example.
So what would your solution be to evil?
Darn, that's rough. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when you get older, like 20s, it gets overwhelming. Like all the evil in the world or badness in the world is super overwhelming, and you try to think of solutions, but sometimes I just think there is no solution. But as a Christian, Jesus, Sunday school answer. But I don't know if there's anything that humanity can do to really eliminate evil ourselves, because it's weird. We don't even, like, I don't understand why someone is evil in the first. I don't know, like, what makes people want to do evil things.
I think that is, I don't know, like how to eliminate evil. I don't necessarily think is what what we should be focused on. I think it's a matter of how we deal with that evil that's in the world, and like how we're living with it surrounding us, and how I mean, from a Christian perspective, how we can like, I guess, get closer to God to separate us from that evil and to draw like nearer to Him.
So, what do you think the origin of it is?
Saying that's rough, because if God created everything, then it's
I mean,
like,
yeah,
is he
that's
the
the
founder?
whole deal.
This takes me back to freshman year in philosophy class. I would, yikes, that's a difficult question, because can something exist outside of God if He's the creator of all things? But then that's weird to think that God would create evil, since He's an all-good entity, you know, like something that is without evil. So, how did it come to exist? I don't even know.
I don't know either.
Yeah, that's a darn good question. I'll
Yeah,
give you
it
that.
is.
Well, I would say that evil exists because of the option of, it's still a spiritual answer, but the option of like free will and our own desires that we can act upon. So I don't know. But I don't know why my body or my flesh wants to be evil, anyways.
Yeah.
Why? That's weird.
Human
Like,
nature,
go pray.
sort of thing.
You think so? You think evil is just
Go
a
pray.
byproduct of free choice, free will?
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because if God made, if He's good and He's like, okay, now I'm creating you guys and you guys are only good, then we would do only good. But He kind of gave us free will. But I don't know why some people would want to do bad things.
Like,
you
if
know
God
what
is
I mean?
all good, why would we choose something apart from perfect?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Or why is it in someone to, you know, to do something evil like murder someone or rape someone or like genocide? Like, what draws people to do those things? But it's something in their human nature, which is scary to think, because if that's in their human nature, then it can even be like in our.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how you define evil too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is human nature evil? I don't necessarily think so all the time. I think it depends. I don't think it's very black and white. I think that there's some gray areas in that.
Yeah. It's probably, I don't even know if that's what you asked.
No, that's
Clap
perfect.
for the question.
Yeah.
Clap for the question.
Thank you.
Really.
Clap for the answers. Thank you. Very good answers. So yeah, that's basically it. Just